My name is Aušrinė Šilenskytė, and in this podcast, we explore the possibilities and challenges that implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives bring. More specifically, we discuss about these issues in a context of Finland. We are honored to have this conversation with Hanna Raeluoto, who works as Vice President of Operations at Flowhaven. Hanna has an extensive experience working in multinational global tech companies. Her responsibilities over the years have given her the possibility to view and influence DEI topics through HR and recruitment, and from company policies and practices. Hanna is very vocal in LinkedIn about DEI topics and has a bit of a personal mission to make Finnish businesses more diverse. Hanna, it's great having you today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Without further ado, let's jump into our discussion, okay? Finland is internationally known to be a welfare country, and yet multiple indicators show that countries facing substantial challenges with the issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, known as DEI. So, building on your wide-reaching industry expertise, in which areas of DEI Finland is outperforming or doing well, and which significant challenges remain? What, in your opinion, are the reasons for such a situation?
Well, in terms of gender, Finland is doing pretty well. But of course, my industry, technology, is the one that is not performing so well in that one in general. Like tech in general is very male dominated. Startup founders are mostly men, and so are the VCs. But I'm really proud that this is something that the Finnish startup community has really woken up in the latest years. There are really big initiatives at the moment to increase gender diversity in tech companies, and even the venture capitalists, so basically the companies investing to startups, they are nowadays asking about diversity when looking into potential investments. And I can't help but promoting my workplace here. Flowhaven has a 50-50 gender ratio, and even engineering, we have 45% female team, which is really, really awesome in the tech industry. Then the other big diversity topic, so nationality/race, this is actually something where tech field growth companies are usually doing great and other industries are struggling a little bit. So startups are born global. The idea from the start, even if it would be just like Finnish founders in the beginning, the idea is that at some point the company will go global business and will have global investors. And for this reason, they have the working language English from the day one. Like all materials, all documentation is created in English, which makes it so much easier than to hire that first non-Finn in the company. And because of that, like when hiring new employees, when hiring managers are reading those CVs, it doesn't matter if one's name is Hanna or is it Aušrinė. It doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter if you can speak Finnish or not. But if you send your CV to, for example, Suomen Konerakennus Oy, a totally made up company in this context, who operate in Finland, they have all of the documentation in Finnish, and they used to only speak in Finnish. They will get spooked when they see that the application comes from Aušrinė. Like, can you speak Finnish? Okay, they spend the time reading your CV and they find the information that yes, in fact, you can speak Finnish. But can you really? Can we still drink coffee in the break room and speak Finnish and you get the jokes? Or like, are you expecting us to speak English in our free time? And I don't know if you have done recruitment, but if you have, you usually have a lot of application, and you need to be able to fairly easily sort out the best applications. So why don't cut all the applications that make it just a little bit harder for you? And just so that we are clear, I'm definitely not saying that it's right. I'm not saying that it's fair, and I'm not even saying that it's smart for the company. But I am saying that I can understand why it happens.
I see. Okay. So from the topic, sort of what is smart for the companies, we are aware of general benefits of DEI, right? At the workplace, it brings inclusion, sort of inclusion brings at work innovation, enhances motivation, employee well-being, reduce turnover, to mention a few among many others, right? However, what benefits Finnish firms are likely to gain by focusing on DEI initiatives, and what specific benefits DEI brings for indigenous or locally oriented firms, and what DEI has to offer for those and firms that operate globally?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So no matter local or global, the bare minimum what all companies get from DEI initiatives is the possibility for a wider workforce. So if you exclude a bunch of people, you have a limited pool from where to find those best employees. And also having a very homogeneous work environment is very comfortable and easy. And by this day, I have not heard of any company looking for success thinking that staying on the comfort zone would be the key for success. So for global companies, the benefits are, of course, easy to find. It's widely beneficial when you are trying to appeal to a diverse crowd that you have diverse workforce in every way. For local companies, it is, of course, a little bit more tricky. Like, of course, the same arguments work than with global companies, except with the topic of nationality/race. If you try to serve Finnish clients, why would you need diversity? Wouldn't that actually be quite opposite? With that, and I at this point, I do have to remind that this is not my area of expertise, as my background is from global companies. I would like to raise a few points. Like, firstly, Finland is starting to be more and more global country. We have a lot of diversity in here, so why would we want to exclude these people as clients? Secondly, Finland educates a lot of foreign students who would love to stay here. So we use money to educate people, but then make it impossible for them to stay here by excluding them from the workforce. And the same applies for people coming to Finland in other ways than for studies. They are here. They want to have a life here and they want to be part of society. So why don't we do everything possible to make that easier? I don't know the actual numbers, but it sounds like a waste of money and opportunities. And then thirdly, because Finland as a society is not that inclusive, hiring non-born Finns is actually really smart. You get really like highly motivated people who just want their chance to prove themselves. If the company gives that chance, it's usually a really positive surprise. I know that it has been for Flowhaven. I mean, I understand that it might not be a smart move to hire a content writer who can't speak perfect Finnish if your company operates locally and does Finnish language marketing. But not hiring a non-Finnish speaker to run online advertising, that just doesn't make sense because all of the tools are in English. So just as an example.
Wonderful examples, absolutely. Thanks for sharing them. Now let's move to a slightly different topic, right? So some evidence suggests that when implementing DI in Finnish firms, management face strong resistance. And you already mentioned a little bit where this resistance may come from. Another thing is that discussing personal matters or issues that are sensitive or may create conflicts at the workplace are not exactly very acceptable in Finnish culture, right? So what are the good ways to start when implementing DI initiatives in the Finnish context?
Start small. As
Okay.
I said earlier. So DEI, it's a huge topic, and my belief is that the resistance comes when the topic seems overwhelming. Like, HR has an opportunity to do a lot of groundwork by offering training on DEI topics, especially about benefits of DEI and the personal biases we all have. Like, we often think that we are super open-minded and don't discriminate anyone. And that is true to a certain extent, but when it comes to recruitment, choosing people to work closely with, we tend to favor people that are like us. They look like us, they talk like us, make us comfortable in general. But in general, like start where it is easy and what is easy. Like, of course, that differs with every company, but diversity is something that it tends to build on top of diversity. So just starting somewhere is the key. And another reason to start small is that we really should not underestimate the administrative work that it might take to hire diverse workforce. For disabilities, you might have to work on solutions for them to access your office, for example. There might be specific tools that they need. Hiring the first non-Finnish speaker to a company that has all the internal processes only in Finnish is going to be quite the challenge, and honestly, it requires good sense of humor from both parties, just as an example.
I see. So how to cope with these multiple resistances on the words towards DEI?
So resistance can indeed come from two different directions. And honestly, if the management is against DEI initiatives, you should just leave. I mean, of course, try first, tell about the benefits, but if it's a dead end, it's usually best just to leave, as that is not a place that shares the same values as you do. But then if the resistance comes from the employees, educate, and as said, start small, start where it is easiest.
I see. Maybe you could describe the path that helped Flowhaven to implement these so successfully, and what were the challenges and how did Flowhaven manage to overcome them?
Well, I have to sort of disappoint you here. So Flowhaven is a great example of successful DEI, but it's a really poor example of like overcoming challenges, because it is one of those rare places where DEI was an important topic from day one. So there was no challenges to overcome, as the company was built from the beginning as inclusive. So, of course, DEI work has become more strategic over the years, and of course, it will continue to evolve as we grow and expand globally. But as any kind of like overcoming challenges, there really haven't been any.
I see. Okay, so let me ask it a little bit differently then, right? So building on the experience and on your broad industry view that you have, what are the most essential aspects to consider when implementing DEI in general and within the Finnish context?
Well, in general, it starts by assessing what is it that we want to achieve with DEI. And for that, what issues would be easy to adapt as first steps, so that we could just start something like somewhere. I always say that if you don't know, ask. A genuine interest is usually really well received. Ask the employees what kind of things they feel you're already doing well, what kind of things they see that could be improved, and also what are the concerns that they have in regards to the topic. So from these three questions, you are actually able to create your first DEI strategy, which is, in a sense, it is just a description of what is it that we want to achieve and how do we plan on doing that. Diversity really, it means nothing without equity and inclusion. It doesn't serve either party to hire diversity if you're not willing to take the measures to increase equity and inclusion. Equity is very interesting thing, because that is mandatory if you hire diverse workforce. I think it was only a few years back when the discussion in Finland regarding diversity was more about equality, but now the narrative has changed to view things from the equity point of view. So as an example, I saw this awesome picture that explained the difference between equality and equity really well. So the first image was about equality. So there was this child, mid-sized woman, a handicapped person, and this really tall man, all driving the same size bike. So as you can imagine, that just doesn't work for anyone. Well, perhaps one of these people, if they get lucky and they get the right size. But then the second picture was about equity. So the kid had his like little kid's bike. The woman and the man had like bikes that fit their size. And then the handicapped person had this like 3-wheel bike that you drive when like laying down. So everyone had the tools that worked for them. So they were able to go on a bike trip together, in a sense. So in business world, equity is about not giving the same tools and other options to everyone, but giving suitable tools and suitable options to everyone. And then inclusion, on the other hand, it's about making the people feel like a part of the group. You need equity to get everyone to be able to contribute for the team, but you need inclusion to make people feel that they are in the same team. It means valuing people as they are, valuing their ideas, backgrounds, and experiences they bring with them, and learning to turn this diversity for the benefit of the firm. So everyone feels that values is created mutually. In essence, it's not about valuing people even though they are different. It's valuing people because they are different. Gender diversity. Finland is doing pretty well with that. We have women in all industries, but at the same time, 30-ish women get discriminated in hiring because of the possibility that they might get pregnant and then they stay at home with the child. It is a great benefit to be able to stay at home with your child for a few years and keep your job. But at the same time, you can see from around you that women returning back to work fall back with their career development for several years. And this is, in my opinion, due to lack of equity and inclusion. Could employers be more open to, for example, part-time solutions so women could combine work and raising a small kid, and perhaps men could do the same thing as well. And then for inclusion, what are we expecting from the employees? Is it viewed as a disadvantage if you want to work partly remotely to make your work-life balance easier? Is it a sign of a great employee that you should be able to stay for work, like after work drinks or something like that? I know that personally, I have had to have that conversation with an employer in my past that, hey, I would love to hang out, but could be like decide a specific day for a month so I can plan on it. I can't stay on a moment's notice because I have to rush to the daycare to pick up my kid. So it was never taught about that staying after work with short notice might be challenging for me because the leadership of that company were single young men. So it's not like they tried to specifically exclude me. They just didn't realize to specifically include me.
Super. Thanks for these easy to understand explanations. Wonderful. Maybe you could share some more examples of practices that increase equity and inclusion at the workplace.
A few things pop in my mind. So first of all, like to support different kind of life situation, it is important to offer possibilities to do flexible work hours, possibility for flexible remote options where it is possible. Again, I do realize that I look at this from my point of view, and naturally there are a lot of professions where you have to be in a specific place at specific time, but wherever it is possible to find flexibility, you definitely should try to integrate this option. And then, of course, as mentioned earlier, perhaps better possibilities to do, for example, part-time work. Your employee might have a small kid or perhaps even an elderly parent that they need to attend to. What are the solutions that could be offered there? Not having company events on weekends, and in general, not having after hours to be the only possibility to have fun with your coworkers. We always forget that having fun with your coworkers is super important. So perhaps once in a while, it would be okay to close the office a bit earlier and do something fun during the daytime. And in Finland, where alcohol is often present in celebrations, make sure that you have those non-alcohol options as well, and don't make a big deal why someone is not drinking. People have different reasons. So same goes with food options. Offer some vegan options, non-pork options. Something like this might be wise to do. And it's also about the language. If there are events where people, loved ones can join, send invitation by referring to partners rather than wives and husbands. So from language point of view, communicating so everyone is able to understand, and that might be in English or perhaps dual language is needed. using multiple languages simultaneously allows faster linguistic integration for all parties involved.
Wonderful, wonderful. So far, we were discussing DE matters from the country and the organization point of view, right? But let's cover that comprehensively, and let's talk about individuals, every one of us. So what actions each individual residing in Finland, as we're talking within this context, right, could take to improve inclusion in the country, and what could be sort of suggested as actions for individuals belonging to minority and to the majority groups here in Finland?
Wow, you really ask big questions here. So let's start with both groups. So this one is personal to everyone. I briefly mentioned this earlier. So start digging your personal biases. If you say you don't have any, you're either lying or you just haven't done enough thinking, because we all have them. So it's okay to have them. It's the key is to be aware of that, like recognize your intuitive choices and then be willing to challenge them. But then as a member of a majority group, two things come to my mind that you should be prioritizing. So first one is to think. So take some time to think, what is it that you could do to be more inclusive? Like daydream about being in someone else's shoes. I said earlier about the afterworks at one of my previous workplaces, like my colleagues, they didn't mean to exclude me, but they didn't take the time to think how to include me. So try to think as much as you can. And once you have done that, move to the second point, which is listen. So don't assume that you know, ask and listen. Even if something is not true to you, it can be true to a lot of other people. So when you are a part of a majority, it is a lot harder to see discrimination or the struggles of a minority because they don't directly affect you. And that's okay. If you remember that even if you don't see it, it does not mean that it doesn't exist. So then for minorities, and I do have to say that I'm struggling a little bit with this topic because I think it's a bit harsh for me to come and tell anyone, let alone someone in a minority that I don't belong to, what to do, but I'll give it a shot. So I think that the most important one is willingness to talk and educate. If the other side just doesn't realize because they just haven't thought about it, or they ask you something, like don't get offended. That's a great opportunity for you to teach and increase inclusion. And I can really understand that it's super frustrating and you might feel like it's not my job to educate people, and it's not your job, but going that extra mile might just make things a little bit easier for you and others like you.
Wonderful. I'm loving this conversation. And here is one more question before I let you go. Why do you personally think DEI is an important topic?
Because it just makes sense for the business. Like, yes, I also have my personal humanitarian side that makes DEI an important topic on a personal level. But the reason I talk about that in LinkedIn, where I present myself in professional settings and not in Facebook, and yes, I am still like old enough to still use Facebook, which is more for personal topics, is that I want companies to succeed. And I believe that DEI is key ingredient for success when going into the future.
Hanna, thank you so much for finding time to share with us your valuable insights. It was great discussing with you.
Thanks so much, Hanna, for having me. It was great.